Who's the next one then? Who's the next hot take? Do you have one, Kira?
Yeah, I've got one.
Go on.
Okay, so I've been going back and I just brought him up and so I've been going back watching loads of the old VODs, right? Okay, 'cause I've been watching a bunch of old like Faker stuff, and you need to watch other players to understand Faker. And my God, and I don't give a fuck, is DanDy the most overrated great player I have ever seen in my entire
DanDy?
fucking life. DanDy, the MVP Ozone White player from Samsung. Holy fucking shit, is DanDy the one of the most over... Like, as in, like, if you see any of those morons put out a fucking Twitter thing of, like, the top 5, like, junglers of all time and all that, right? Like, put it this way, I think Jankos clears them, like, easily. Like, not even, like, close. I wouldn't even, like, have him in the same conversation as Jankos. I actually wrote the list down. I don't even think Dandy's in the top 5 anymore. And I was like, and people just constantly bring him up. And it's always, like, the same talking points. And it's not that they're true. It's like, Worlds was insane. Yes, Worlds was insane. But, like, one Worlds is not a career, right? And the second of all is, like, oh, how he changed the metagame with Mata. But the problem is like, when you actually watch it, it doesn't actually stand up to, like, consideration. Like, I would actually argue, like, Blue done more to evolve, like, the game because of... And it was more a response to what Blue was doing and Ozone learning from Blue with Heart and Spirit and Daddy than it was, like, Mata and DanDy just, like, innovating the game completely, and they were the only people that understood all this. It was just Blue had different player constraints and so played it to a different way. And, bro, this guy... Like, I watch old League of Legends. This guy's gameplay does not hold up well. Like, it really doesn't. It's like, it's really, really suspect at times.
I feel like the discussion around who was the best, like the all-time best in the game that gets patched every 2 weeks, you know, at least, you know, even if soccer changed, I think that Pelé, Maradona, Messi, Ronaldo, Zidane, they were all playing kind of the same game, even though, like, obviously, athletically, people change. Like, League is such a drastically different game. I would say it is so easy to play as a jungle when nobody's playing jungle support and you're moving with Mata and your mid laner. I think that the year 2014 for Pound was probably his most dominant year of all time, like until like the MSI 2015 was really like his golden era. So if you have mid prio and your support goes with you and you're playing extremely aggressive jungle and you arrive 3v1 against a jungle, doesn't really matter if you play right or if you play wrong. But over the course of his career, I don't think that like Ozone was like a leading team. Like for years and years, they struggled to actually make the leap and close the gap with like the top teams. So I feel like, for instance, someone like Karsa would definitely, for me, already... Karsa has been consistently, like, immensely improving teams he's been playing in. Very underrated jungle. Back from the time that Thorin mentioned of the Flash Wolves, and then had a pretty good track record in China. I feel like, you know, rating jungles out of... Like, I hate this thing of... And Samsung White, by the way, it's my favorite team of all time. But I absolutely hate the fact that we take... someone I can that's my preference, picking one tournament that lasts 3 weeks and making it a statement for a game that lasted 15 years makes literally no sense. Like, if you want to judge the best players in the world over the course of 15 years, you need to look at like their performance and their achievement over time. Samsung Galaxy White lasted literally like this version of the team lasted a year, I think. I don't exactly remember when they made the swap.
Yes.
Right, it was the swap between Dade and Pound on the mid lane position. It was the sister team, so every improvement that White was finding, Blue was finding it too, and every improvement that Blue was finding, White. So it was really, as you said, meta, patch, player preferences, level of confidence, and they were like bursting in confidence after the regional qualifier and stuff. So it is so upsetting to see like these rankings with like, oh, it was a very dominant performance at World, therefore he was one of the best. Because if you look at his performance when he's one of the guys that he came to NA, right? If I remember well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Even Looper, right? They came to NA, and Looper did some good things, but you see some junglers. You know, I remember of Kakao, for instance. Spirit came to the West. You see these guys, and you see the team they played with, and you're like, oh yeah, you're a jungle that needs three lanes of prio to actually execute your game plan, which is get 2 camps, invade the jungle, fight to death. If it doesn't work, just FF. And the game has evolved, right? The game has evolved. It's not that anymore.
The problem I have with this take is technically this applies to everyone who didn't have a really long career, because the problem is when this guy was on top was 2014, so we'd only had like the second year of like LCS, etc. So at the time that did make you the GOAT. Like, people forget, it's not an exaggeration, after year one 2013 Faker was the GOAT already, because 1 year at that level was already enough to be the best player ever. Like, no one had even done 2.5 years of being really amazing at that point in time. So the problem is, I will always think the worst thing about the Samsung exodus is no one will ever know for those players what their careers would have been. The only one who actually escaped was Deft, because he just kept playing at elite level in LPL. Then he came back early enough that he still had the rest of his career. And now he even won Worlds on the way out. So he got to win everything. Everyone else who did that basically tanked their career. Like, even Mata, yeah, he had a brief time in LPL where they were good and he was on the RNG team you were talking about. Then he came back, did the super team. After that, he was washed immediately. By the time he got to T1, that was one of the worst T1s they had, was the one where he was on it. He was a bit washed at that point in time. So a lot of those players, sadly, and people like him and Mata obviously had the chance to be the greatest ever to play their roles. They somewhat sacrificed it for money in this weird experiment where they went to the LPL. And the worst thing about theirs, if everyone remembers, was at least the other ones made some sense. Like Imp, Acorn and Flame going to LGD made sense because that was like a cracked out team. DanDy and Mata both just went to the same team that had like dog shit fucking laners. So it was like you took like the best jungle support and put them on a team with average ass. Most people here couldn't even name the three players. Yeah, no one remembers these players. They weren't the good ones. It's not even later on when you all remember an Easy Hoon. That was years later. They were on some mid-ass teams. And so the problem is this. If you mean this whole career, well, yeah, like, I mean, actually, I think Zabatine nailed it. If you remember, in 2020, I did a video where I said, you can actually make the case Jankos is the best jungler to ever play League of Legends. You look at his career, unbelievable resume, unbelievable consistency year on year, played every single style. By the way, the other name was Karsa. Karsa's in there as well. It's why Score gets to be in there with fuck all, like one championship ever. Because actually, junglers don't tend to have longevity. They don't get to be truly great year on year on year on year. And crucially, they don't tend to be either good domestically and good internationally. So it's not a big list. With that said, though, I do think you're wilding. And here's why. Because first of all, do you remember what the infamous anime-style nickname of DanDy was? Do you remember, Kira? What was his nickname?
No, I actually can't. So
his nickname was the Prince of Thieves. Now, that should already tell you a little something, mate, because you know how many fucking games this guy stole a Baron or a Dragon? It is mental. He was actually one of the players. By the way, he was doing this in 2014. Like, I was laughing with Monty about this today when we were watching back that Cloud9 FlyQuest game where they just let Inspired, like, hang glide in and just grab the Baron. You're like, what is this? You had your whole team there. You're going really slowly with like the health bar up. Like, bro, people can't even pull those off in 2024. This guy used to be the guy where, for real, he'd be losing a game. You're about to take a Baron or and he would do the old school full commit flash by himself in the pit and smite it and get it so many times. It's gross, bro. Like, you could look at the rest of that team and go, but he had a super team. They still would have lost fuck tons of games if it wasn't for this guy. So he was unbelievably good at that. Secondly, I do think that you cannot overrate how good what him and Mata did to jungling was. Like, this isn't an exaggeration. If it wasn't for them and what they did in Samsung White, like, I'm not joking, if you went back in time and you did some like Kennedy assassination of Samsung White, if metaphorically in a video game Minecraft, before they came to the arena, the West would be up shit's creek for the next 10 years. Every single Western great team in mid laner and jungle took those VODs and studied it like they were fucking decoding like the hieroglyphics with the Rosetta Stone, bro. Like, they were like looking at the VOD frame by frame, and all of a sudden people like think of these are the greatest macro players ever, Nuke Duck, Mithy, they were all suddenly like, I think I get how you jungle now. Like, that was like what changed the whole game for them. And he was one of the reasons why. Like, it wasn't just like, here's what I don't get about that take. Maybe if you want to talk about how like the team's team fought, Blue was better. They had like interesting lane style where they just get Deft to survive the first part, then mid game they just can't be beaten in a team fight. But the thing with this team was, the reason why TSM could never have won that quarterfinals ever is because every single time at the beginning of the game with any comp, they could find and isolate kills in the fucking fog of war. It's unbelievable how they did it. Like, they would just set up their wards in a way where you'd think if you just anti-strat the VOD, you know, you watch what they do, I'll just put mine there. You could never get them, bro. They always would have like a pocket where you're thinking there isn't a ward there. You walk onto it and then Mata just comes up, roams up on a Thresh or something, and you'd shout, oh, look, you've got like a Lee Sin and a Thresh just fucking you up in the jungle when you thought you were just walking through. Like, I'm fucking just going through my path in. So they already, no team ever early game could fuck with these guys. They were unbelievably good. And then lastly, weirdly, if you just watch that Worlds, that's why it's such a weird take, because you're making like you watch the VOD and he's all shit. Bro, at Worlds, he's the only jungler that could play every champion. Right? You had all the meta ones, everyone knows back then. Everyone loved the ganky ones, right? Lee Sin, Elise, and fucking, what was it, Kha'Zix? Or Jarvan, there you go, Jarvan. Yeah. He could play the Rengar and all the shit no one else could even play, bro. He had them all. He had the Evelyn too, which was like a more of an LPL pick. This guy was cracked. So my problem is this. Maybe I'm talking about for a year and a half. He wouldn't have the longevity to match up with the names I'm talking about before. But I disagree. I think he was a fucking sick player. I don't know, what angle was he not good?
Because, like, mate, see that you're telling me the Prince of Thieves, right? I was thinking that was like the angle was he was giving all the gold fucking back, Robin Hood style. Because anytime they lose to blue, I see a 10k gold lead, and I'm like, okay, I've forgotten the VOD, but I know what DanDy's going to do here. He's got like the iconic, like he goes onto Rengar, tries to one-shot death, dies, comes out of base, does it again, dies. I was like, okay, DanDy's tilted, goes to Baron, dies again. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ, DanDy. Like any time it's like the iconic, they lose to blue, it involves DanDy either A, like tilting, or like B, Daddy, like knowing who he's playing against, does some absolute bullshit where he just like sits somewhere on the map because he knows the other person's like tendencies like all too well. The other thing is, I will not disregard, World is insane and he's crazy, but the whole point is, I don't know like to the degree what like DanDy was able to do without Mata, because I saw Mata transform so many like junglers from like a player without Mata to a player like with Mata and his guidance, and how he'd done it so often and so regularly. I'm like, okay, I understand that. Everyone bangs on like Looper because he's literally known as Mata's third summoner spell. Like Mata literally like fucking calls in a Space Marine drop pod and Looper appears on a ward right next to him, right? But Looper doesn't get any credit for that because the narrative goes that Mata's telling Looper what do you call it, to TP stuff. And it's even funny because like Monty now talks about Looper, like said that about Looper, but if you watch Monty doing his commentary, he's like, Monty's praising Looper at the time. He's saying like, you know what I mean? Because that narrative hasn't like came around yet. So like, look, and Monty's saying like, oh, Looper, he's the best teleport user in the entire world. He's like, he completely changed this team and stuff like that. And it's like, it's so funny to like hear that, and I'm just like, okay. And so I never, like, if you were to, I know what Yankos looked like without like caps and stuff like that. I've seen the means tested, and like DanDy's gameplay like holds up for a period. Oh, but like he has like deficiencies, and even he has deficiencies, and not to take away from his like peaks, because it's a different era, and everyone had like problems in the like gameplay. But everyone makes out that he's like so squeaky clean and everything, like, you know, everything was like so perfect that he revolutionized the game. In many ways, like did, but his deficiencies were like, put it this way, he was the reason they won Worlds, but he's also the reason they never won LCK.
Yeah, but
obviously they did win it obviously with Daddy, but a very different time period.
I'd say, you know, there is something about the jungle position that's very misunderstood, is like the profile of junglers, because it is much harder to play like DanDy than to play like Bengi. You can control lanes.
Well, that's obvious.
You know, you can sit in the bush and have the best laner in the world and just wait for the jungle to try to gank him, match the 2v2, kill 2 people, and then recall and play for tempo, right? That's a Yanko style that works very well. No junglers are able to do both. I think that one thing that needs to be given to DanDy, very few junglers were able to be that often on the good side of the coin toss as a coin flip jungle. If you looked at like the junglers back then, right, Spirit and stuff like this, these guys were really good and they were very aggressive because there was a culture in scrims in Korea. But I think that it is. I don't consider like DanDy to be a top 5 jungle all time, but I feel like saying that he was an Inter is a very normal thing.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.